You're gonna get abducted. It's gonna happen. Oh, there we go. Oh, did they really do a freeze frame?
Mrs. Patrick, I have your son. He is safe in my custody, so long as you do exactly as I say.
What kind of voiceover is this? Well, what the frick? That was so pointless. Why did they...
Alright gang, so first things first, I just watched the 1970 film Ransom Money starring Broderick Crawford, one of those old actors from the, like 40s and 50s and stuff who found himself doing this kind of crap. So film stars him and a bunch of people who look like they were relatives of the director because the acting is beyond horrible. This movie is so bad.
You've got to help me. My son has been kidnapped.
Are you sure he hasn't just run off someplace and gotten lost?
The note, read the note.
There's nothing on it. It's blank.
But there was a message on it. You've got to believe me.
I believe you, ma'am. Let's just sit down and you can tell me all the details.
My
Just
son has been
calm
stolen.
Down. Just calm down. We'll sit down for a moment.
No.
Please.
And I mean, in comparison to like every other movie I'm watching in this series. Okay, so it's called Ransom Money, which is it's just kind of your run-of-the-mill story. A mom and her kid are out on the road. They go somewhere. He ends up alone. Some guys in a white Volkswagen bus come and snatch him off the street and hold him for ransom. You don't realize in the start, but you find out a little ways into the film that the mother of the kid, I think the kid's name's Ronnie, the mother of the kid, married some rich guy. He died, so she's had all this money left to her. Because you're watching it and you're like, she looks like just a random woman. She's dressed, nice, but she's just, she's kind of this Kris Jenner looking chick with her kind of Leave It to Beaver son. They're not dressed super nice. They're driving an old man's car, but yet you find out like 15 minutes into the film that they're actually like stinking rich. So you don't even get through. It's one of those movies where it opens and you got visuals of the car that they're driving in and the credits are immediately going. You don't even get halfway through the credits before you see the Volkswagen bus following them and already can tell us something bad's gonna happen. But they have this like happy, fluffy music playing, even though it's abundantly clear that we're looking half the time at people who are going to abduct this kid. So the acting is horrible. The mom has a couple good moments. When she gets really pissed and starts screaming, her acting isn't utterly horrible. But the son, Ronnie, literally, he's a classic kid who the highs are high and the lows are low. So it's either like, oh, golly, Mom, I want to see this. And then she's like, well, later. And he's like, okay. The kid's first line in the movie is something to the effect of, God, Mom, isn't this keen?
Wow, Mom, this is keen.
Which would be fine if it was like a 1940s movie, but this was 1970. So then the mom has to go and check in on their hotel room, and the kid's like, oh, golly, Mom, can't I just stay here and like look at the Grand Canyon? And the mom's like, okay, but stay here. And then she leaves, and immediately my arms are in the air. I know it's 1970 and it was much more common for parents to let their kids kind of roam around, but you're in a place you don't know very well. There's nobody around really. There's like a couple random people looking out, and she tells the kid to stay there, and then he wanders off, and it's when he wanders off that he gets grabbed. So I was like, yeah, great, good job, Mom. And oh my God, the acting. The first person that the mom runs to is like this park ranger guy who's literally just like, okay, ma'am, what is happening? That's how all the acting is. I mean, thank God you have Broderick Crawford. You have someone with a little bit of talent there. Every single person in this film looks like they were just like the niece, nephew, sister, brother, girlfriend, boyfriend of whoever directed the film. They just threw family members in there. Nobody has any acting experience. I'm pretty sure this isn't even a made-for-TV movie, and it's below those qualities. I did a film, not really a film, but I made a movie with some friends when I was literally 12 years old, and I was the oldest person in the group. I'm not kidding.
God damn it, we missed him, Kelly.
Shit, they didn't get him.
That's a little clip from the video of the film that I did with friends. The acting, the dialogue, the storyline, the structure, everything in that is better than this movie that was actually produced by at least some small film company. And just everybody. And then the bad guy, the mystery bad guy that wants the ransom, whenever he calls her, you know, you want the bad guy, especially if you can't see him, you can only hear their voice, you want someone with a distinct voice. Like the third Die Hard movie, you have Jeremy Irons talking to him over the phone for the first half of the film. This guy sounds like he worked at a southern convenience store down the street and they just pulled him out of the store for the day to do voiceovers for the film. The guy's completely non-threatening.
Mrs. Patrick, I'm calling again to give you further instructions. If you wish to call the police, it makes no difference to me. There's nothing they or anyone else can do. No one will ever catch me.
It's so bad. And everything else is bad with it. There's literally moments where the audio just cuts out. You'll hear people talking and then it goes quiet and you start hearing like the that you'd hear like in really, I mean, there's silent films. Or they're early talkies that have better sound quality at certain moments than this film does. There's literal camera angles in this film where they're sideways. Like there's some angles where it literally looks like they just brought the camera into the room and were like, here's a table, and they just set the camera down there and just were like, good enough. There's nothing redeeming about this movie. Even the story is just, I mean, anybody could come up with this. Okay, let's do a ransom movie. Okay, or so we're gonna have like a parent and a kid, and like the kid gets abducted because it's always the kid that gets abducted, and like we'll make sure that the mom is super rich, so then like there's the reason to kidnap the kid, and then it'll just be like she's the mom who wants her kid back, and they're the people that want money to get the kid back. I mean, this is the same premise as that really crappy Halle Berry movie that came out where her kid got abducted in a park. Except at least she was actually in the park, kind of near her kid. This mom just walked the hell off and left her kid there. So, I'm so glad I got this movie as part of like a really cheap 50 pack. Because if I would have spent 50 cents on this movie, I'd want my 50 cents back, and I'd go and find someone to steal 50 cents from just to make me feel a little bit better about my life and the time that I just lost. And you know, as the movie's going on, I keep thinking, okay, she's rich. Why isn't she just giving him a ransom? Why is she just sitting around in her hotel room? And then you get about halfway through the movie and you realize, because the bad guy says, I want $1 million for your son's release. And I realize the guy waits till the middle of the movie before he even says what he wants in a ransom. You know? So logistically, you're thinking, okay, it's got to be about more than the money. This is about inflicting pain of some kind. Because why would you wait so long? If it's all about the money, why would you wait like several days before you actually ask for that specific ransom amount? And, you know, what is it, Broderick Crawford comes in. You know, to this point, this guy's just been all about, listen to what I say, you gotta give me a ransom. The movie's called Ransom Money. You have to give me a ransom if you want your kid back alive, don't mess around. And then Broderick Crawford's like, oh no, it's not about the money. This guy's just trying to show off how smart he is. But all the guy's talking about is leading up to the, you know, I want something for the return of your kid. And then it takes him halfway through the damn movie before he even tells her what he wants in a ransom. And then so it's like, okay, so pay him the damn ransom. It shouldn't be from this, like we should be done. We're 40 minutes in the movie. We should be done after 45 minutes. give him the ransom, he either gives your kid back or he's a sick, twisted son of a bitch and he kills the kid anyway. One or the other is going to happen, but either way, it's like, give him the money.
Oh god, please tell me this isn't gonna be a super dark. Wait a minute. So now it's like not quite dark, but it was pitch black before. You blocked. Wait. Oh, what the? Okay, see, this is why camera placement is so important. Okay. They block the guy off. He gets out. That's the guy running. Instead of running off that way, he runs directly at an officer to run by him. But of course he had to go this way because you set up the camera facing this way, and if he runs off that way, it's not as... It's why camera placement is so important. Then again, I don't think they were too worried about anything camera related. This film was pretty much done the most simplest, amateurish way possible, which is get, at least a couple angles of each person. This film, whenever there's people talking, it's always a kind of medium shot on the person who's talking, and then they go to these cutaways like this, where you're just like way too close to people's faces. And then the only time where the cinematography is actually semi-okay, not even decent, but okay, is like transitional shots, where it's like, okay, we only need to get like one shot for this whole moment. So instead of being like, oh, let's just get a bunch of crap and hope it all cuts together, it's like, oh, well, we can be interesting with this because it's just one shot to worry about. You're not thinking about other shots. And that's how you get garbage amateur filmmaking. Like, I can't even tell they really came up with a shot list for this film. Whoever the DP was, I'm pretty sure he was asleep half the time that they were filming this movie.
Now, without totally eviscerating the whole thing, I will give the film three benefits to it. One is the second half is definitely a lot more entertaining than the first half, which isn't saying much, but at least it gets a little bit better as opposed to just staying the same or getting progressively worse. Two, the film ends in Las Vegas, so you get a little bit of early 70s Vegas vibe. So there's that. And most importantly, I appreciate, because I was dead certain I knew who the bad guy was that wanted the ransom money. And the film does a pretty good job of making you think this particular guy. He's the main woman in the movie. This guy's like her financial advisor guy. And he acts kind of suspicious, and you immediately think he's the guy. And then you find out later in the film he's actually not. And it's one of those films where usually in a film like this where you never see the bad guy, he's usually someone that you see throughout the film. And then at the end you realize, oh, it's that guy. It's been him all along. But this is one of those films where you don't even see the guy till the end. Like, he's just a guy that pops up in the last 5 minutes of the movie. And again, this movie's so bad I don't care about giving you spoilers, and you probably don't care either. So essentially it turns out the guy that is the guy that wants the ransom, he's this he's this guy that like supposedly died in a plane crash, so he's kind of off the grid, which might be part of the reason why he thinks he can con everybody, is because nobody can really know who. Nobody's really going to guess he is who he is because he's supposed to be dead. And he also like he went to college for like electronics and stuff, and he knows explosives and things like that. So that kind of is a running thing in the film. And his biggest fault is that he's a gambling addict, which is, it's kind of a whatever way to finish things out. But yeah, essentially, he leads the mom and these officers, Broderick Crawford's character included, out to like the desert. Because, they got to be somewhere near Vegas. So it's like the Nevada desert, Death Valley. I don't know exactly where it's supposed to be. It's out in the desert. And you see this little something in the distance, and it looks like her son, and then it blows up. You're like, oh God, he blew her up. Oh no. But you can even tell by looking at it that it's a dummy. But you think, okay, it's a cheap 70s video. It's supposed to be the kid, but they blew a dummy up, and it looks like a dummy because they couldn't make it look like a real kid. But no, they blew a dummy up. So then, after the guy that wants the ransom puts the fear of God into them, he then has the kid walking around in the desert near them, and he's got this big bomb thing, strapped around his chest. And he gives explicit instructions not to get too close to the kid or he'll set the explosion off. Again, we find out at the end of the film that the bad guy has a history of working with pyrotechnics, so he probably knows what he's talking about. So the mom and the officers out there finally find the kid, and he's just standing there facing them. And the mom is trying to run up to him, like to embrace him. And I'm like, he said, stay away. You get too close, you'll blow the kid up. So they're standing there, they're waiting. They make a money drop. And finally, the mom goes,
I can't stand it anymore.
and she breaks free and starts running towards the kid to try to, like, hug him or something. And I'm just like, you're gonna get your freaking kid blown up. And a bunch of these, like they're like mines in the ground start going off all around him. The kid doesn't get blown up, but the guy decides to not stick to his word and blow the kid up if anybody gets too close. He blows these other things up around him. And so the kid's still fine. He's still got the bomb around him. So then one of the cops comes up, takes the bomb off of him, throws it aside, and then it blows up. And it's like, you had all this time. Why didn't the guy that wanted the ransom just blow him up? Of course, people usually don't like it when you blow a kid up on TV. But it's like, this guy's pyrotechnic guy. This guy knows how to blow stuff up. He threatens to do so if they don't follow this one thing, and the mom can't follow it. Because apparently she doesn't care. A great ending to this film would have been if the kids were taken away from her and put in foster care. That would have been a good ending to this film, because this mom was just... she did everything wrong, pretty much. And so, he has this ample time to set the kid's bomb off. It just doesn't do it for some reason or another. And a little detail you have to notice at the beginning of the film is they leave a ransom letter on the woman's car when they abduct the kid, and she sees it and reads it, and then when she goes to show it to somebody else, it's disappeared. So it's like they have this disappearing ink technology. So essentially the reason this guy wanted this $1 million was because he's a gambling addict and he wanted some spending money in Vegas, so he takes this money and goes to Vegas with it. Because of course he's such a smart criminal, and he puts down some money at the cashier to get some chips. And then after he walks away, the color of the money fades out. And it's acknowledged that Broderick Crawford, who ends up dying, his car ends up, there's like an explosive goes off in his car and it makes him crash and kills him. So we know the bad guy killed Broderick Crawford too, just because of how he died. But yeah, he puts some money down at the cashier, and then when the cashier looks back a little bit after he walks away with the chips, the color fades out. So Broderick Crawford kind of used the same kind of, I guess you could say, ink technology that the bad guy used against him, because the cashier points him out, like, this guy was giving me fake money, and they bust him. And the two officers that were helping him were still alive that went down to Vegas to see if they could catch the guy. Because again, they found out that there's this one particular guy of interest who's got a gambling problem. Where are you going to go in that area if you want to gamble? Vegas, it's right around the corner. And so they make some commentary as the guy's getting busted, like, yeah, he, meaning Broderick Crawford's character, whose name is Medford in the movie, they're like, yeah, he pulled this switch and didn't tell us about it, So, it's like a little bit of a twist at the end, but it's nothing that great, and it's like, eh. And in the end, the guy gets busted, because, as the last line of the film is, one of the cops says, once a gambler, always a gambler. It was still a trash movie. It was still garbage. Horrible acting, mediocre cinematography. It's a little bit better in the second half of the film, but I don't know if it's so much because of the production quality or the acting. It's just, there's more tension later in the film when you're wondering if the kid's gonna be okay. You still don't know who the killer is. The guy who I thought was the killer turns out to not be. Like, there was just enough to kind of hang you around, but I feel like a lot of people would have turned this off in the first 10 minutes and been like, what am I doing wasting my time watching something so bad? So this film, I couldn't even find this film on Rotten Tomatoes, but it has a 4.3 on IMDb, which kind of surprises me. But maybe people, that second half, maybe that's enough to bump their score. I would give the 1970 film Ransom Money, I'm going to give it, as an IMDb score, I'm going to give it a 1.7. And if it wasn't for Broderick Crawford being in it, and he kind of plays a slightly less sadistic, almost similar character to Orson Welles' character in Touch of Evil. He's a little bit, he's kind of big and burly and older. Other than that, that adds half a point. So I probably would have given it like a 1.2 without Broderick Crawford. But Ransom Money gets a 1.7 from me. Pretty lousy. And that said, let's go to the next video. Alright everybody, time for review number 2. The second video I watched and reviewed, I actually thought was probably going to be a little bit more graphic than it turned out to be. It actually wasn't quite as graphic as I thought it would be. When you have a film that involves war vets and troublesome carnies, like, you think it's a movie like that could get pretty dark. Anyway, the next film that I'm reviewing went under a few different titles. The version that I have actually says it was called Train to Kill USA, which I think there was a version where it was called Train to Kill, and then there was a more later American release that was called Train to Kill USA, but the original title of the film is The No Mercy Man. And literally during the opening credits, they play a song called No Mercy Man. And man, it is a banger. And it lays down details. It literally was written, you could tell it was written for the film. It's laying down details that you don't even know are going to become prominent later on. And then there's another song at the end of the film that also, like, is a different song, but it addresses the details of what happened in the film. So, despite the fact that my copy is Train to Kill USA, the original title I'm going to go with is The No Mercy Man. Now, this film, which was, what year was it done? I want to say 73. 1973, No Mercy Man, 1973. And it's a film that doesn't have any, you know, even like these really low budget movies, they managed to scam in at least some prominent actor, or at least someone who used to be prominent, maybe somebody who's considered a washed up actor, but this film didn't really have that. There was a guy, one of the lead, pretty much the main bad guy in it, who scares the crap out of me because of his ability for his dynamic to change from this like seemingly chill but almost homicidal guy to a guy that's just very calm and caring of his brethren. Loyalty is everything to this guy, which is frightening. But there was an actor in it named Rourke Tarkington, who he's one of the carnies in this movie, and he's kind of the head, you know, if all the carnies are kind of considered the bad guys, he's kind of the head one. And he was actually the first black actor to ever appear on an episode of the Andy Griffith Show. And I saw an interview with him many years later when he was an older guy. I had to find an interview with this guy because his chillness in the film that kind of covered up this very disturbing homicidal nature to him scared the living hell out of me. And I literally had to look up, when he was on the Oprah Winfrey Show, and he was like, you know, probably 60-something. And he was just sitting there like, oh, hey, everybody. I just had to see that this guy was a normal human being so I could handle how frightening he was. But this film actually, there was a film festival. I don't remember what it was called, but it was like a Quintin Tarantino driven film festival where 37 films, I think personally picked by him, were shown. No Mercy Man was one of the 37 films he actually picked. Now, this film has a 4.5 on IMDb, so not too great. And I don't even know if it had, does it have? Yeah, it has a 29 on Rotten Tomatoes. I noticed a lot of these supposedly bad movies I looked up on Rotten Tomatoes, a lot of them have a score of 29. So I don't know if that's some kind of default in their system. I don't know. And a lot of the Rotten Tomato scores I found are just audience scores, because a lot of these films are so obscure that they don't even have critic reviews. So most of the time, and I'll tell you when it's not, but these are mostly just audience scores. So it has 29 Rotten Tomatoes, not great, and a 4.5 on IMDb. So you're thinking this is going to be a pretty trash movie. And it ain't great. It's obviously very low budget. Even for a 70s movie, there's, again, no big stars in it. There's nothing breathtaking about the cinematography of the film. They use a lot of predictable things. You know, part of the thing that involves is men coming back from fighting in Vietnam. And so when they have a PTSD, or a moment where their PTSD is triggered, it's very, like, there's lots of, like, whoa, like, lots of, like, crazy, chaotic sounds to try to show, like, their mind, and you see them, like, and then the video will kind of just be like on their face as you see, you know, that very 70s representation. Almost almost psychedelic representation of what it's like when you're having some kind of emotional or psychological strife. But the film, it begins on this the character that Rourke Tarkington plays, and he has this like sidekick, this little toady sidekick guy who's always just walking around, and he acts real tough because he's always got these bigger, stronger carny guys hanging out with him, and he's just always like, "Hey man, what's this?" And he's really obnoxious, but he's kind of a good character. And they're just kind of raising hell, and they end up stopping near this farm where the Hand family lives. And they try to, they tie the father, the patriarch of the family up, and they grab the daughter, and it seems pretty obvious that they're going to sexually assault the daughter. And the daughter, like a badass, they have her in the house. She grabs like I can't tell if it's like a knife or a box cutter, and just goes like into the toady and takes off running. And fortunately, this is right when the mother of the household is bringing back Obi Hand, who's their son, who has just come back from Vietnam. So those guys split, and the family ends up being okay. Because you think early on, you don't know if this family's prominent. You're wondering if they're going to get killed. So the film is kind of split between two dynamics. What's going on with the Hand family and what's going on with the carnies. And the carnies are this collection of, this group of people who, they're already obviously, criminal-minded people. They've done a lot of petty crime, and they actually, like, track this family that's in an RV and kill them to get money. Or at least it's inferred. They kill the father, but it's kind of inferred, I guess, that they kill the rest of the family. And I think the idea is that eventually their carny work is going to be gone, and then, what are they going to do for money? And they're kind of these people that are like, well, if we don't have money, we'll, do whatever we have to do. And if we have to kill people to get money, we will do that. So not a very strong moral compass. So you're seeing that development. And then with the Hand family, you're seeing the development of them being bothered by the fact that these carnies are around and have just threatened their family. But then, of course, there's the focus on Obi, who was this, very, skilled, decorated soldier in Vietnam, and he comes home and he's really messed up from it. And he's either just constantly, he's almost in like a catatonic state where he can't, like at one point his father comes in and is like, hit me, and he's like, I can't do it. He's like almost in a catatonic state. And then other times, when the PTSD hits him and he starts correlating something that's happening back in America with something he experienced in Nam, and he can snap. And at one point halfway through the film, they're at this service station, him and a couple of his military buddies that have just come back to America. And small town, everybody knows everybody, so they know the guy that runs the service station, and some of these carnies show up, and they start hassling and beating up on the service station guy. So Obi and his military buddies come and beat the hell out of the carnies. So that, of course, sets the stage for the last act of the film, which is these carnies now have multiple reasons to go specifically after the Hand family, because they were unsuccessful when they went there early, and now Obi and his buddies beat the crap out of their friends. So they bring in a bunch of their fellow biker friends, because of course carnies and bikers are like that, I guess. I don't know, maybe that was a thing in the 70s. I certainly don't know anything about it. And the head biker guy is an actor named Sid Haig, who actually, this movie was perfect for a guy like this. He was in a lot of horror films and a lot of films that involve, like, kind of people like sadistic bikers. And they were and back in the early 70s particularly, the Manson family roamed around with these, like, homicidal biker gangs. Like, that was a big thing. Especially in the late 60s and into the 70s. So the fact that this is a 1973 film and they thought, hey, let's have a sadistic biker gang get into the mix with these carnies, that was probably tapping into a lot of the reality of what was going on at the time. And that sets the stage for this big, big conclusion where these bikers and, these carnies are going to go up against just the Hand family and these couple of buddies of Obi's back from the military. And the ending is, it's not shot great. And there's some things that are a little left to the imagination, but of course it's this big final confrontation where whoever's left of the biker gang and the carnies, they go up against the Hand family, and even when they show up, Obi is like sitting, he spends a lot of his time in, like, I think it's a barn. He kind of just has this room that he stays to be by himself. And even as they show up, he's still there, just overwhelmed and like he can't fight anymore. And it sets the stage for this big conclusion that's really, really entertaining, pretty impressively done for a really low-budget film, but at the same time, it wasn't really shot that great. It's a little broken up. The cinematography is never great, but it's never horrible. It's very made for TV, just a lot of general close-ups and general medium shots. And of course, as a low-budget film, the film quality ain't that great. I'm assuming the copy I have of it's probably about as good as any other copy there is to be found out there. But the acting is actually, especially considering some of the other stuff I've watched, the acting overall is pretty decent. Rourke Tarkington's character, again, scares the crap out of you. They had this Sid Haig guy who was pretty well known in films like this. I mean, again, I said there was nobody known in this film. Was known, especially if you you're in the circle of viewing movies that are of the type that he would tend to show up in. But, pretty much all the carny actors were, unknowns. Every member of the Hand family was fairly unknown. If anything, Obie Hand is like the worst actor in the film, and I've read that in reviews that, he's probably the worst actor in the film. And he's kind of the lead, but he's kind of not. He almost kind of comes and goes throughout the film, and then has to kind of figure out what he's going to do and if he has what it takes to save his family in the end. And so it is formulaic to a degree. There, of course, near the end of the Vietnam War in the 70s, there was a lot of these films about guys coming back from Nam, maybe being a little bit messed up from it, but having these skills, and something happening to their family or something that forced them to, even though they're back at home on home soil and they're not in the war anymore, they have to use the skills they gained to their advantage to get revenge, usually. Kind of the counterpoint to a movie like Death Wish, where Charles Bronson kind of does the same thing. He gets revenge for his family, but the whole objective of the film is that he's a pacifist when it starts. It's, the polar opposite of that. So, it was a fairly formulaic thing in the 70s to do these films about these guys coming back from Nam all messed up and having to kind of, to a degree, dig back into that experience they had fighting overseas. But in one review I saw of it, and I agree with this. This is something where you have to appreciate a film that was this small, that could have just been very, it's the 70s. There was exploitation films going all around. This could have been a very exploitive film. You could have just had a guy coming back from Nam all messed up, and he could have just gone ballistic and killed half the town. And, it probably would have been more successful and more popular because it would have shocked people. It would have brought people out of their seats. But it's acknowledged in this film that literally up until the last couple of minutes, most of what Obie Hand does when he comes home is he just stays home and he suffers. And he's almost catatonic. He doesn't really do anything. He doesn't go out and look for a job now that he's back home. He doesn't try to find work similar. Like maybe he goes and tries to find work as a police officer to use some of his skills. He just is home, and he's very broken. And the only time, we really see him in another state than that is when he has to be, like when they're at the service station and he sees a friend of his being attacked, and he snaps and just starts beating the hell out of these carnies. But the film does a really good job of showing that, PTSD is complex, and you don't just turn it on and off. At your, every time there's a potential that this guy could have fought with someone, he didn't fight with them every time. And even by the end of the film, you don't know if he's going to fight to save his family. So the film does a good job in the way that other films of the similar time period didn't really do, in that they tried to be, in a film that's kind of wacky and crazy, they tried to be a little bit more realistic about, the PTSD of soldiers coming home from Nam, which, in a lot of circles, the PTSD wasn't really all that well understood, even by that point. If you're just someone writing a random script, you probably know even less about PTSD. I don't know, maybe the person who wrote the script knew a lot about this stuff, and so they knew how to portray it in a way that just wasn't happening in most other films that dealt with similar subject matter. So there was a lot of elements of this film that were actually pretty decent. I think, a lot of films get a really bad review if they have even just a semblance of a formulaic nature, if it's not completely original, or at least original looking. People are going to dock you really hard for that. And if it's a low-budget film, you're going to get docked for production quality. You're going to get docked for, you know, maybe boring, not necessarily bad, but boring cinematography. You're going to get docked for having a bunch of no-name actors, you know, no names put meat in the seats, usually. So there was a lot of things that you could dock this film on, just generally speaking. And I'm trying to review these films like, you know, this film didn't have a $5 million budget or something. This film probably didn't even have film probably had maybe $500,000 at best. This was a low-budget film. What were these people able to create with the limited resources that they had? You know, they didn't have Sidney Lumet. They didn't have William Friedkin, a young Steven Spielberg, you know, coming in to direct this film. They didn't have any of those big 70s actors, you know. And this film, for all of its weak points, which a lot of them were probably just a result of what they had to work with, the film is actually, you know, fairly entertaining. It doesn't really lose you. You kind of don't really know for a dead certainty how things are going to turn out in the end. And even by the last couple of minutes, you really don't know what's going to happen. You hope the film goes a certain direction, but you don't fully know. And again, the acting, by most of the characters in the film, the acting is pretty decent. Again, for being a bunch of no-named actors. It really wasn't that bad. So IMDb viewers give it a 4.5. And again, I think a lot of it is for the reasons I just mentioned. Similarly, Rotten Tomatoes, it only has a 29. I think, you know, people rate it. And people that go on Rotten Tomatoes are usually a little bit more critical than IMDb, but those are the two things I'm using to count. So with a 4.5 as the IMDb score, I would give this movie, again, acknowledging the restrictions it faced, I would give this movie probably a 5.9, almost a 6. I definitely think it deserves a little bit better than it's been given. And look, even Quintin Tarantino, you know, obviously acknowledges that as a film he really likes. So it really wasn't that bad. It sure as hell was better than Ransom Money. I'll freaking tell you that much. So again, that'll do it for this. This is episode 3 in my series of reviewing bad 70s films. And thank you so much for watching. Remember, as always, to like, share, subscribe, hit up my Patreon if you want to help me out that way. I'm trying to post more and more on there to give people more incentive to help me on my Patreon, so you can look forward to that if you sign up. The link is in the description as always. And till the next episode, till the next bad movie I watch, this has been Steve the Amateur Historian, and I'll see you next time.